Hi everyone. Yeah, we weren't sure this was going to happen, but you guys just keep on plowing on, literally, and here we are. I think what I wanted to do was to tell a story for you tonight. Like, I don't really like I get a bit bored with the traditional kind of PowerPoint presentations, the shit I'd done lectures, as I call them. Where we flick through kind of competition entries that didn't get won, or here's a building that was built or something. I think it's nicer just to try and talk about ideas and to listen to some stories. So we're going to try and do that tonight. I'm going to start with a little prologue, just an introduction. I don't know, I've never been to this university before. I don't know if anyone knows the hell who I am or what we do. So I'll start with a little introduction, and then we'll kind of segue into City Everywhere and the stories of the post-Anthropocene. Hopefully this all becomes clear. Let's get going. So I'm a speculative architect. What that means is that I don't design buildings, but instead I work between documentary and fiction to tell stories about the global and urban implications of new technologies. So we borrow from the techniques of fiction and film to engage audiences with the strange ways that technology is changing our world. So we cite our work within the distributed geologies of the Anthropocene, this geological epoch where humans are the dominant force shaping the planet. But tonight I want to do this kind of story where we will travel around the dark side of our luminous screens to see the shadows cast by our glittering cities of technology. It's a story of this Anthropocene, but in many ways it's a story of what's coming next. It's a portrait of a series of places that aren't designed for us, where we are no longer at their center, but it's a story of machines that all come together to constitute this fictional place that I like to describe as City Everywhere, which is a landscape, a world endlessly remade, reshaped, and engineered by and for our machines. It's a world that I think all of us are now in many ways inhabiting. So to ground all these stories, we always begin this process of speculation and imagining futures in the real world of the present. And we try and understand and assemble this world from physical landscapes of technology that we explore in the nomadic research studio that I run from London with another architect called Kate Davies. The studio is called Unknown Fields, and it's a nomadic design practice that sets out across unknown territories to explore landscapes that are playing a critical role in the shaping of our cities. And we travel behind the scenes of emerging technologies. We traverse global supply chains to explore the remote and extreme landscapes and territories that our contemporary cities set in motion. So all of the footage you're going to see tonight is going to be collected by us and our team out in these sites of the Anthropocene. You'll see a collage of drone footage and hidden camera investigations, interviews and speculative narratives. You'll see a collection of toxic objects that Unknown Fields have created. You'll see reimagined landscapes and the cataloguing of distant matter collected from distributed sites. So what Unknown Fields does is make films and provocative objects from all of this expedition work to try and disseminate these ideas to audiences and to explore the dispersed narratives that coalesce to form our modern cities. So across the last few years, we've based studios on board a cargo ship traveling through Asia, or we've traced our technologies back to the sites of their production. We've traveled through the irradiated wilderness of Chernobyl. We've visited the illegal gem fields and Wild West mining sites that are cut out of Madagascar's rainforests. We traveled through the Arctic ice shelf to explore the climate change landscapes of far north Alaska. Or we visited the mining landscapes of outback Western Australia, where all our gold comes from, that's used in our jewelry or our electronics. We bought an old school bus for a road trip through the US, visiting UFO conspiracy theories, spaceports, and collecting stories of militarized landscapes. And we go to all these places because we think they're iconic sites of the Anthropocene. These are landscapes that are shaped by the immediacy of phenomena that we see emerging more abstractly in the familiar cities that we call home. So we map the complex and contradictory realities of the present as a site of strange and extraordinary futures. And then all of these real sites are collaged together with the speculative architectures of film that are extrapolated out of them by my fiction studio in Los Angeles. And there we explore the consequences of near-future and speculative urbanisms, and we use these techniques from film and performance to deploy design speculations as kind of imaginative tools to help us explore the implications and consequences of emerging trends and technologies or ecological conditions, but also to disseminate these ideas like kind of Trojan horses embedded within the mediums of popular culture. And these are the two aspects of the work that I want to talk about tonight, this kind of documentary analysis of the present and then this exaggeration into speculative and imaginary scenarios. We kind of go through this process of kind of archaeologists of the present, sifting through the detritus of the everyday, rummaging for fragments of who we are, and then realigning these pieces into new constellations, where we exaggerate the world, treating expeditions through it like location shoots for a film, or the scraps of a new film set, constructing new stories from the remains of the moment to reveal invisible connections, emerging phenomena, and strange new worlds. So the other things you'll see tonight are these little collage fragments from these science fiction film projects. Projects like this one. This is a film called Where the City Can't See. It's set in a fictional future Detroit. I'm not going to show the full film tonight, but rather I'm going to unpack it and narrate the world in which this film is set. It's a film that's based on our research into the cities and landscapes of the Anthropocene, the special economic zones in China, and the near-future technologies of the smart city. And it's the first film that's shot entirely using LiDAR scanners, which is a key new data acquisition and surveillance technology upon which much of the smart city systems are based. For driverless cars, for example, navigate and understand the world using this technology, and this is the way that they actually see. So across a single night, the film follows a group of young car factory workers who drift through the city in a driverless taxi. And they're part of an underground community that work on the production lines by day, but at night they adorn themselves in machine vision camouflage and the tribal masks of anti-facial recognition makeup to enact their escapist fantasies in the hidden spaces of the city. And they hack the city through a network of stealth buildings, ruinous landscapes, and ghost architectures. And what we're going to do in this story tonight is kind of follow in this driverless taxi from where the city can't see. And we're going to see the city through these same kind of point clouds. So I want us all in this room to kind of jump in the back seat of this driverless taxi and travel together out on safari, to travel together with the city operating system, the kind of AI that's managing this future city. And together we'll all travel through an atlas of sites that constitute this city everywhere. And we're going to travel from the edges of this city where we'll see where all our contemporary technologies begin their lives. And then we're going to move together into the city surface, into the center and core of that city, to see ourselves and the strange kind of creatures that we're all becoming. So perhaps the best way to think about it is this kind of collection of stories and myths of the post-Anthropocene. Post-Anthropocene is this epoch that I'm talking about where City Everywhere lives. City Everywhere is a condition where we no longer have a city or country. There's no longer a center or periphery, but just this continuous city of technology which is stretched across the planet. So we're going to explore a series of tales that form the dark side of technology. We're going to travel across an atlas of geographies and gadgets and objects that form a portrait of this emerging place. So let's get driving. So here we are in our driverless taxi, and this smart city AI is sitting beside us, and it smells of hard drives and fiber optics and Red Bull soda. And the electric motor hums, and we rumble on quietly. And the city has invited us on a road trip across its technological skin, it says in an automated voice. And it's looking forward to showing us around to visit the sites and structures made for and by its machines, sites of this planetary scaled city where nothing has escaped. So in this taxi, we're going to trace the edges of these sites. We're going to explore their glitches and anomalies to see where these often invisible machines and this extraordinary invisible infrastructure that computes our world bubbles to the surface, often to condense into the landscapes, architectures, and natures of our emerging world. So to begin, the city takes us back to the beginning of the beginning, it says, where seconds from zero, 13.8 billion years ago, the creation story of lithium, a fundamental component in all of our technologies, begins. So from the spark of the Big Bang to the flicker of an electron, it was there at the dawn of time. And in this vast cloud of swirling cosmic matter, gravity, and violent collapse, the sphere of the Earth was formed, and embedded within its surface was traces of lithium. And now as our taxi drives along the azure shores of the city's energy pools, through Chile and Bolivia, through a land that's no longer of an indigenous population, but of evaporation ponds of the world's largest lithium mines. So this is the landscape behind the scenes of all the batteries that power our technology. 70% of the world's lithium resources is here, the city says. And you cannot see it on the desperately flat horizon or access it by any public road. Its mystery is protected by its isolation. But through the eyes of a drone, we can see our technology splayed out before us. Because lithium development is not mining through extraction, but through evaporation. So what we see is this tessellated ocean of evaporation ponds, where each shift in hue signals a rising concentration of lithium salts. And from above the earth, the ground comes alive with the colors of lithium electricity. And elsewhere on a stage in California, Elon Musk, the tech evangelist and entrepreneur, proclaims his vision for a green energy future, a world where everything will soon be solar. But like most Silicon Valley preachers, he's presenting to us a seductive future, a hopeful future, but at the same time it's a decidedly uncomplicated one. Because now Elon Musk must literally buy Bolivia and evolve it as the new Dubai. So if the future is electric, if the future is Elon Musk and his Tesla-fueled dreams, then we have to understand that the future is also buried here, beneath the salt fats of the landscapes of Bolivia. And as we keep on driving, we see from a clearing in the point cloud mist the cavernous landscapes of our ephemeral technologies. So it's in these massive mining excavations scattered on the edge of the world that our city everywhere begins and ends its life. So each of us have a little bit of the gold from these sites in our pockets, charged and quietly vibrating as part of our technologies. And in this same landscape, Aboriginal Dreamtime narratives speak of a time when the earth was soft, and creation beings shaped mountains and rivers. When the rainbow serpent slinked across the ground to create a river and a wild dog came to rest to form a mountain. And now, as the lights of the city wash out the sky, the songlines walked by these ancestral spirits are sung anew, now laid down with the tracks and the beasts of the mining industry. And the dreaming landscape that embodies the creation stories of Aboriginal Australians is overlaid with this vast infrastructure of resource speculation and financial fictions. And geological survey planes track back and forth, laser scanning the earth, searching the ground for these topographic anomalies which indicate pockets of undiscovered minerals. And now the digital models of these landscapes are linked live to the fluctuations of metal prices on the stock market. And what that means is that as explosive diggers and drills have replaced the slow erosion of rivers and earthquakes, we are now scoring our economy into the archaeological record. These landscapes are a chronicle of the digital permutations that drive our modern world. And from our taxi window we can see vehicles just like ours that no longer have drivers, but that are just systems. And we keep on driving, and we head deeper into the dust. And here we see the rhythms of the human conveyor belts in Madagascar. So one of the planet's most precious ecological treasures is actually home to one of its poorest nations. And here it raises difficult questions about the complex relationship between necessity and luxury. So 90% of the world's sapphires are said to be pulled out of the ground by the human conveyor belts of Madagascar's gem fields. And hidden amidst political uncertainty, this island's fragile and unique ecology is being smuggled out illegally, boat by boat, and gem by gem. And here, rare tortoises leave in rucksacks, and precious stones are shoveled from the earth and smuggled onto the stage in pop star bling. And in these illegal mines, it's cheaper to pay 20 men in rice than it is to maintain and fuel a mechanical conveyor belt. So what we see is a hidden black market supply chain that is now connecting two types of choreographies, one in the lawless mine sites and the other in the jewelry stores and hip-hop music videos and celebrity red carpets across the ocean in the core of City Everywhere. So for the jewelry of this new form of city, Unknown Fields have used the amount of rice that the human conveyor belt consumes in a day to manufacture a precious stone that embodies the systems through which these worlds are intimately and profoundly connected. So the red Madagascan rice that's grown endemically on this treasured island is a staple food of the miners, and it's been collected locally and shipped to gem specialists for carbon analysis. So by subjecting the rice to extreme heat and pressure in the laboratory, we're able to shape and make a single synthetic stone. And after manufacture, the gemstone is being set into a gold tooth, ready for that $1 million smile and the outrageous lyric. So it's an object that's encoded with the sum of the human conveyor belt's labor and then expressed through a music video. So from kilojoules to carrots to the nightclub, in the glare of this cheeky gold grin, we see the cost of luxury, the cost of beauty, the daily allowance of rice, and 20 men shoveling at the bottom of a hole. And in our taxi, we continue to follow the breadcrumbs of technology, and we arrive at a village organized around metals and hardware components. And we see a group of villagers that are buried not by soil, but by collected piles of e-waste gathered in their houses. And they mine the discarded technology, and it surrounds their living, sleeping, and eating spaces. And they mine their domestic landscapes for lead and geranium and neodymium, copper and tin. And next to the pot of noodles simmers the acid bath that's dissolving circuit wafers and separating metals and flavoring their soup. And close by, our taxi rolls up to the shores of the world's largest radioactive lake in Inner Mongolia. And this lake sits beside the world's largest rare earth mineral refinery. And here we take a selfie with our phones and we see our reflection in the mirrored screen, because the material to polish the glass of all our technologies, the material to run the hard drives and its software produces this very lake. And collapsed together in this single luminous surface, we can see ourselves and this black, black earth. And from this sludge, we're making a vase for the city to thank it for showing it's around. It's a set of vases made from the amount of waste created in the production of 3 objects: an iPhone, a MacBook, and a Tesla electric car battery. It's a Ming vase for the City Everywhere generation. And now the city takes us to see where all this raw material is refined and shaped into the familiar objects that fulfill our lives. Almost all of the world's Christmas decorations are made here. That tree lighting up your lounge, the decorations hanging from the ceiling are all made in landscapes like this one. And they're all made by the human machines of the city that, just like the diggers in Madagascar, are orchestrated around efficiency algorithms. In a way, these are the real robots of our new landscapes of technology, where the body is matched in speed to the conveyor belt that's turning and turning in front of it. And here, most of the world's electronics are put together. And in cities like this one, we brand our technologies with terms like the cloud, or air, or featherweight. But in reality, they're violently wrenched from the earth. And as our personal electronics tend towards the invisible, they conjure in their shadows landscapes like this. And an undeniably visible grey mountain, a 1 kilometre deep pit, and a 10 square kilometre radioactive tailings lake, all conditions and infrastructures that are a counterweight to the apparent immateriality of computing, communications and electric energy. And these are the architectures behind the screen and beyond the fog of the smart city cloud. These are the physical outputs of our very digital engagement with the world. But perhaps here we can start to imagine how we can rethink these gadgets, not based on how they slide into our pockets or feel in our hand, but for the networks they set in motion and for the resources they might distribute. So as designers, what could the alternative criteria we might apply to the engineering of these supply chains if they weren't engineered around cheap labor or material availability? So with that in mind, we travel to the same area of the city where we see a camera flash and a model pout. And fast fashion's rolling tide dumps mountains of cheap clothing onto our street shores. We fill our stores and our wardrobes with objects of desire, worn for one wild night and destined to be discarded. Here in our taxi, we pick at a loose thread on the garment that all of us in this room are wearing, and we unravel it across continents, from wardrobe to warehouse, from factory to field, in search of the landscapes that are really behind our runway dreams or our street blue jeans. So our clothes make journeys of tens of thousands of miles in their process of production before we wear them, making textiles the most globalized industry on the planet. And the byproduct of this pace and scale of production is also the destruction of the very thing that brought the industry to Southeast Asia in the first place. So here on our taxi tour, we meet the last generation of master weavers. This is a group whose skills will now die with them, because the apprentices they would once train now man the rumbling mechanized looms of global fashion, raw cotton plugging their ears, deaf to the din of the world around them. And here we visit the last real gold thread maker, an alchemist who's lovingly tweaking the machine that his grandfather made, all the while resisting the move to synthetic, cheap and fake yarns that are used by all the other companies around him. So here we span from fashion victims to victims of fashion, and for the cloth of City Everywhere, Unknown Fields weave a collaborative textile with the last gold thread maker and one of the last true master weavers in Varanasi. An audio from a series of interviews and the sound of their looms was transformed into that black and white binary pattern you just saw. And then it was woven on these machines into the cloth. So the textile is an archive encoded with the skills and stories of a dying craft and woven from the same hands the textile is trying to remember. So to make the gold thread for the textile, we followed the shipping containers that bring fast fashion to our shores all the way to their death, where after their short 25-year lifespan, these big mega container ships are returned to India and Bangladesh to be broken up and salvaged in the shipbreaking yards. And we collected fragments of this raw steel from the Bangladeshi shores, cut from the carcasses of dead ships, and shaped it to form the core of the gold thread. So this cloth is a textile archive born from the skeletons of the industry that brought it into being. And the cloth now covers a young Indian textile worker who walks slowly on a sacred procession from her home village amongst the cotton fields to the huge mills and factories of the vast textile industry supply chain where she works. And as she walks across City Everywhere, she's gradually wrapped in this glistening gold textile as she bears witness to a series of transformations like weaving, dyeing, sewing, and pressing. And her journey suggests the walk along the fashion catwalk and the path our disposable fashion takes in its process of global production, and the path so many women like her have taken in moving from village to the factories of the city. And here her journey ends as she's completely cocooned, standing at the huge container port amongst the mega container ships that will export her to the West. So I want to try and get across this idea that city everywhere cannot be described as a single point on a map. Architects are used to that idea of buildings as singular objects in singular places, but in reality our technologies cast shadows that stretch across the earth. So now on our tour we pack up all the objects and materials we've just been visiting in these sites and we send them off in ships around the world. So this is the view from the computer-controlled container fleet of the mega shipping industry that now navigates autonomously based on GPS satellites. So the ship captain and the portside crane operators have also been made obsolete. And now we head to the north. As the ice melts, the busiest shipping lane in human history is now starting to open up, this mythical Northwest Passage. It's a true incentive for climate deniers. It's a route that will cut global shipping times in half. But now the cities of the Arctic coastline will stand empty, filled with these unmanned beasts of global trade, autonomous machine cities, just like the rest of our ports. And here we see a lone engineer and her dog heading back from a maintenance run. Like a lighthouse keeper, just her, the horizon, and the creaking cranes. Her body repurposed as a component in the landscape-scale robot that stacks the containers ready for transport. And we keep on traveling across this pixel sea, and we're explorers in a strange new land. This is about the Sandy Island mystery that was in the Sydney Morning Herald. Sandy Island was actually found on Google Earth. So the city tells us about a place called Sandy Island, a strange landscape that's really just a collection of dark pixels, GPS coordinates, hyperlinks, and stories. It was originally charted by the whaling ship Velocity back in 1876, and the island has long been what's called an evidence-doubtful landmass, a place that perhaps was originally recorded to be a trap that supported a map's copyright, or maybe it was a mislabeled pile of volcanically ejected pumice that was seen drifting on the horizon. But whatever it was, this cartographic apparition remained visible in the Google Earth models of the city until an Australian research vessel confirmed its non-existence during a 2012 expedition to survey the ocean floor. So up until that point, to a world of Google explorers and hyperlink adventurers, Sandy Island was just as real as any other place they visited online. And places like this suggest the question that if landscapes and buildings exist solely in the mediums through which we experience them, then perhaps they become just as real as anything physical. Because when it's these kind of machines that are doing the looking, then these digital geographies become new and occupiable sites. Geographies like this one, the Amazon Fulfillment Center. So stretching out before us are its endless shelves and storage bins. And this is where we keep, well, everything, says the city. And the Amazon bookshelves are stacked based on a complex sorting algorithm that's engineered around sales frequencies and buying patterns. And we watch as Amazon robots rush through the stacks as they navigate from book to book, filling orders by following the most efficient route generated for them by their navigational programming. And in a way, this is the library of City Everywhere, that isn't organized around the Dewey Decimal System, but by buying habits and aggregated data sets. It's a library that isn't organized for us, but it's organized around algorithmic logics and inhabited by bodies repurposed as machines. And now we follow the Amazon Prime drone that's zipping about above us, and we see that the drones have become as ubiquitous as pigeons. And we customize our drones like we once did our phones. And the air is filled with the digital confetti of our every desire. The skin of the city is warm and it's freckled with 1,000 lights that are winking just for us. And the traffic lights flock at rush hour. and all of our packages rain down in an Amazon hailstorm. And the rumble of drone propellers has become a new natural soundscape to the city of a new generation. All the dogs in the city are walked by drones now, the city says. Think of the time saving. And they deliver our pizzas. Hot dogs, stuffed crusts is how we like them in city everywhere. And now we watch as a network of drones now monitor the wayward youth of a London council estate. And we watch as a young girl has hacked and decorated her own drone, and now she uses it to pass notes to her boyfriend trapped in the tower opposite. Like kids in an old-fashioned classroom, they scribble messages in graffiti on the drone and they send it back and forth between the towers. So in this near-future city, these drones form both agents of state surveillance, but at the same time, they become co-opted as the aerial vehicles through which two teenagers might fall in love. And we see another drone armed just with a dildo that's disrupting a Russian parliamentary session. And we see another drone armed with a different kind of cylindrical device. It's flying overhead en route to attack a village in a country half a world away. And now we're getting closer to the sites of the city where we all live, and our taxi takes us to visit the residential districts, to visit the Samsung towers. And we put our ears to the cool beveled aluminium door of one of the apartments and we listen to the conversations inside. Through the door we hear someone called Jury drop a Samsung Galaxy SX phone onto the kitchen table, and we hear it chime softly with the Samsung Qi Smart Power charging mat. We hear her scream down the hallway at her husband, raising her voice over the Samsung air conditioner. "Why does the TV say LG on it?" she says. "What do you mean, because it's made by LG?" he replies. She screams, "It's a new TV. Are you trying to get us thrown out? Our lease is up for review in 3 months and you bought an LG TV into a Samsung housing block. What the hell are the neighbors gonna say?" she screams. And the city just shrugs. It uses Apple and doesn't care for the tribulations of the Samsungese. And we get up, we keep on going, we head to another one of the apartments. The fire department rushes past.
A South Korean woman got a rude awakening when she left her robot vacuum to do the cleaning while she took a nap. The vacuum cleaner reportedly mistook the woman for dust, locked onto her hair and tried to suck it up. The vacuum suction was far from gentle, and wrenched the woman from her slumber. The woman's hair then became entangled in the cleaning device. The woman, who has not been named, was unable to free herself and called the fire department with the desperate rescue plea.
And we head to another apartment, and inside we hear a scream. Heinz was forced to apologize after a QR code on a ketchup bottle linked to a hardcore porn site. The guy on the other side of the door scanned the label to read about the latest recipe promotion, but was instead directed to German porn site Fundorado. So we used to share our world with static objects, but now everything listens and watches and talks back. And now we head in our taxi to the beating, purring and whirring heart of the city. And we drive along the aisles of Facebook machines, past all of our messages, photos, inane chatter, hopes, dreams, desires and darkest fears. An electric car motor has given way to the whir of cooling fans. And it's not a grand cathedral, it's not a great library, but at a time when our collective history is digital, this is our generation's cultural legacy. And perhaps we'll soon write soliloquies for the server aisles like we once did for rolling hills. Or couples might steam up the car windows parked in the artificial moonlight of vast data complexes. And hidden within the server stacks, the city takes us to visit the renderlands and the data farms, and we drive through the Indian quarter of the city. So in design studios of the West, architects and directors sketch out their designs and dreams for imaginary cities, while in India, across the other side of the planet, this massive anonymous workforce turn these wireframe worlds into the high-fidelity digital architectures of developer renderings, video games, and Hollywood blockbusters. So this is Prakash, the city says. He's a render farm worker making and shaping the digital worlds we all inhabit. And Prakash has fallen in love with the digital model of a beautiful Hollywood actress after spending 14 hours a day endlessly rotoscoping, rendering, and compositing her into blockbuster films. He has lovingly airbrushed across every pore on her face, every strand of her hair, as he 3D models her superhero silhouette scene by scene, frame by frame, day by day. And by night, when the fluorescents are switched off and everyone else has gone home, he straps on his VR goggles, and they walk hand in hand through the streets of a city that he's collaged together for them, from scavenged VFX movie models, or the leftover 3D game assets that remain on an Indian studio hard drive after a studio production is cancelled or an architect loses a competition. So the digital ephemera of popular culture now fills our physical spaces, and we drive and live in a utopia that exists in the thickness of a screen. We live out our lives in a virtual city that stretches from Los Angeles to Bangalore. It's a world of demolished landmarks and drowned cityscapes, alien invasions, digitally simulated actors, and our outsourced, pixel-projected dreams. And when we turn off these utopias, when we turn off all these digital worlds, this is what's left behind. This is the physical world when everything disappears into the thickness of the screen or the lens of Google Glass or Oculus Rift. So modern film studios are an analogy for the urban spaces of city everywhere, where we're now starting to see the emergence of a new kind of architecture, a new type of ornament that's based on calibration crosshairs and targets, where a wall is stripped back to become the scaffolds and infrastructure for a digitally constructed world. And we see an architecture that's lying in wait, ready for the premiere of 1 million animated movies that will illuminate its surface with color and detail. And this is the future that technology promises us.
A nightfall of time.
Sparkle.
Ciao, Johnny. Mabuti na halata. Kumusta,
You can
John?
move the old-fashioned way. Century 21. John Anderton! Right about now. Escape from it all, Linda Lewis. John Anderton.
So when we turn off this augmented world, when we turn off the bespoke billboards of Minority Report's urban spaces, when we turn off the tailored ads, the navigational prompts, the Tinder profiles, and the status updates of our sci-fi cityscapes, we'll see this green screen world where everything has become a screen. And here we keep on traveling and we visit another apartment, an augmented apartment in an up-and-coming area of the city, where the renderings on developer billboards have become inhabitable utopias of AR-fueled gentrification. And just like in Samsung City, we eavesdrop into some of the conversations. We see a real estate agent showing a client around a digital construction site. Here the physical shell of the building becomes a fixer-upper canvas, and building debris and unsightly neighbors can be hidden behind the rendered glow of our digital imaginaries. And the occupation of space is now reimagined on individual scales, and each of us are attuned to our own architectural channels. Okay, so what were you thinking? Asked the real estate agent, as a Google image search box appears beside the door. We have some 21st century textures. Early Floyd, classic Tilco. For something really special, I can offer you one of our IKEA packs. Very electric, very tasteful, 100% uncustomized, she says. And a daybed winks out of existence to be replaced by a set of side tables in primary colors and a rectangular bookcase. Ooh, a lax, he says, and a billy, he exclaims. And the agent taps some more buttons, and a series of blonde and laminate objects start to appear around the space. A low Japanese-style bed overlays the couch, and he sinks down into it. His eyes gleamed over in a pixel glaze. And we jump back in our taxi, and we keep on driving. And we're starting to come to the end of our tour. We're heading into the core of the city, and a dull roar fills the cabin as we drive. We wind down a window, and in the distance, we can hear an audience screaming and going crazy. Have you ever been to a Hatsune Miku concert? The city says. She's the pop star of our generation. She's a pop star for city everywhere. So Hatsune is a 3D projection with a larger fan base than most living musicians. And the crowd waves their glow sticks for a digital ghost of the city. Because Hatsune is the first animated pop star. And just like the Kardashians, or the Logans, or the vloggers and Instagram stars, she has no physical presence. She's just a media construction, an agglomeration of pixels. And to the beat of Hatsune's hologram, the young ravers dance with explosive contortions as they invent a new choreography that distorts the silhouette and disguises the proportion of their frames so as to evade body detection algorithms that are used by the city surveillance cameras. And they reimagine their fashion cycles to follow the rate of Moore's law, or the latest phone model or software update rather than a change in season. And they adorn themselves in camouflage textiles, a new hoodie that's designed to be invisible to the scanning technologies of the smart city. And their iridescent textiles reflect the light of CCTV laser scanners to create these exuberant glitches and distortions and disturbances in the data set. The eccentric and the imaginary always occur in the slippery spaces between the data points. And as we finally get back in our taxi, we see the words Hello Cinti blinking on the dashboard display. Our journey is at an end and the system is beginning to reboot. So in computer programming, a Hello World program is a software system that outputs Hello World onto a given display system. It's a super simple program used to verify that a language or a system is operating correctly. It's the first words that are spoken to us by a new system. And Hello City burns onto the screen, announcing itself, telling us that everything is going to be just fine. But in many ways, the smart city never gave us this warning. We aren't sure how it really got here, but we certainly aren't going to let it leave. It's just too seductive, too shiny, and too easy. And from our tour, we can see that our technologies, our buildings, our spaces are formed from this planetary-scaled machine. An infrastructure so large that it has become invisible, a machine so often disguised, ignored, or forgotten behind the gloss of the screen, the seamless aluminium edge, or the glare of the pixel. But in city everywhere, ideology rarely evolves at the same pace as our technology. But perhaps when we're here, if we can understand and can map these systems, then we can begin to reimagine them, to conjure new stories, to tell new mythologies, and to imagine new technologies for this new kind of city. And my watch tells me about a coffee machine it just met. And the city wraps us in a warm embrace. And the LEDs blink and the cooling fans
In
spin.
the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
And the streets are lined with sensors and the electromagnetics hum.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
And our faces are bright in the rolling glow of a rectangular screen aurora.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
And in the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. And in the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. And in the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all
Thanks. That's it.